Hi, my name is Renee Peckinpah, and I'm doing my presentation on Saul Axelrod. When we were given a list of behaviorists to choose from, I briefly Google searched some of them, only because I wanted to pick someone who seemed relevant to my line of work, or someone who had published work within an area that I'm interested in. Saul Axelrod had published many articles regarding autism spectrum disorder, educational settings, as well as self-interest behaviors. So each of those are within the realm of my line of work, or it's at least something that I've worked with in the past. So I definitely found it to be more enjoyable and interesting to do research on someone and something that felt more relevant. So my introduction, Saul Axelrod was a special education professor at Temple University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And he taught there from 1972 to 2011, which was when he retired. So when I was actually researching about his work in retirement, I didn't find anything right off the bat. I simply Google searched him, and scrolling through, I actually came across his Facebook page. So I looked further into it, and I was able to identify that he is in fact still living, and this is where I was also able to locate his year of retirement as well. But he had a very successful career, contributing to 10 books and 63 scholarly articles, a few of which I will discuss soon later on in this presentation. But his primary focus within his career and within his contributions was on ABA within the educational setting. So alongside his successful career of research and teaching, he's also very well known for breaking down and simplifying ABA techniques and terms in order to provide a better understanding for educators. So to the average person, ABA can be a very complex concept. So in the school system, we know that educators have certain criteria and requirements that they must meet when providing education to their students. So not only meeting these requirements, but additionally providing an education to students with developmental disabilities can be extremely challenging. Saul Axelrod's simplification of ABA language and how the techniques can be used within the classroom wasn't to assume that educators aren't capable of working with students with special needs. It was simply to assist educators to better implement the strategies and techniques without requiring any extensive training or further education for them to learn about the principles. When educators have a better understanding of implementing such practices, it becomes almost second nature. It ultimately will provide the best educational experience for them as well as their students. And then I also included a picture of him. So his publications, the first one I chose of his and reviewed was called Applied Behavior Analysis, Autism and Beyond. Within this article, it's discussed that the identification of applied behavior analysis as the treatment is the treatment of choice for problematic behaviors. It also included the importance of early intensive behavioral intervention, as well as the positive effects that it had on individuals with autism. In addition, this article also included information from our class book about behaviorism by B.F. Skinner. It discusses his identifications of misrepresentations about behaviorism. All in all, this article really explains the importance of implementing ABA procedures as well as the effectiveness. The second article that I reviewed was titled Evaluating Open-Ended Parent Reports and Direct Preference Assessments to Identify Reinforcers for Young Children with Autism. This article I found very relevant to my experiences in my line of work, so I really enjoyed this one. It discusses the importance of conducting preference assessments with children with autism, and as we know, children often have a difficult time expressing what they want, and we know this is exceptionally difficult when working with children with autism. So this is of high importance because this is what will help the child ultimately work towards target behaviors and individual goals. The next article that I reviewed was called Functional Instructional Analyses of Behavior, Approaches Leading to Reduced Use of Punishment Procedures. So within this article, it explains the different approaches that can be used when working to reduce problem behaviors. Initially, a structural analysis of behavior was completed, identifying the variables such as the physical environment. Another approach explained within the article was conducting a functional analysis of behavior, which would help in identifying whether the behaviors are reinforcing something, such as adult attention or just simply using it as an escape. The article further explains steps to take when working to identify the problem behavior, such as when it occurs, who the individual is around, are there certain situations that the behavior does or does not occur, along with many other questions. Ultimately, with collecting this information, it can better help predict as well as reduce the problem behaviors. The next article was the impact of functional analysis methodology on treatment choice for self-injurious and aggressive behavior. Included in this article, it broke down the options for treating self-injurious behaviors and aggressive behaviors. Based off of the research within it, it was identified that reinforcement procedures, such as differential reinforcement of other behavior, or also known as DRO, or the differential reinforcement of alternative behavior, known as DRE, are not successful in eliminating the unwanted problem behaviors. A punishment-based procedure was seen as more effective when using timeouts or overcorrection. Using reinforcement-based procedures was not maintained by providing a social reinforcement. It was found to be more challenging to treat or eliminate the problems when using this procedure. The last article that I reviewed of his was titled Behavioral Intervention for Autism, a distinction between two behavior analytic approaches. This article identifies the distinction between two behavior analytic approaches, discrete trial teaching or training, or discrete trial instruction, versus Skinner's applied verbal behavior, also known as AVB. It includes that educators still find that the distinction between ABA programs continues to be unclear. It's broken down amongst various components, such as the curriculum, reinforcement, motivation, how the instruction is delivered, prompting, error correction, language acquisition, augmentative communication, and data collection. While there were some similarities among both of these approaches, there were definitely differences as well. So the implications of his work. Saul Axelrod was very consistent with his research, focusing on ABA within the classroom setting, the population being those with developmental disabilities. He brought about the effectiveness of implementing ABA within the classroom settings. In addition, he was an advocate for students to have the highest quality of education. And as I previously stated, he also broke down and simplified the ABA techniques and terms in order to provide a better understanding for educators. Having a better understanding of the practices ultimately make for a better experience for educators and students. So these were 5 questions that I would ask him if I was able to interview him. My first question would be, throughout your career, what were some of the obstacles you experienced? Not limited to educators, but family members as well. Question 2, along with question 1, due to any challenges or obstacles that you did encounter through your career, did you ever question whether ABA was the most effective or efficient practice when working with children with special needs? Question 3, in your opinion, do you believe that the use of the terms and language used within ABA are as eminent as we're instructed them to be? Question 4, what would you tell someone who is currently pursuing their education studying ABA? Any advice or recommendations while pursuing this field? Question 5, looking back from where you started in your career and where the principles of ABA were at that time, what do you hope or what do you anticipate for the upcoming years within this field? Okay, so his importance to the ABA field. He was successful in making the connections between ABA and educational settings. He worked to create a better explanation of ABA practices and techniques, not only for educators, but for families as well. He promoted the successes of ABA approaches, and he was also an advocate for students to have access to a high-quality education, as well as promoted individual success for students with autism and students with other intellectual disabilities. And then this is my bibliography where I got my information from, as well as the picture. Thanks for watching.